Hi everyone and welcome to this morning's webinar. For those of you who have just joined, we've already completed a sound check. You can turn up or down the volume on your computer, or if you're using the mic and speakers option, you can do so on your computer. Today's webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be sent to all attendees. We will also include a copy of the presentation slides and a number of useful links. If you have any questions, you can type them into the questions box at the right of the screen on your control panel, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where we'll try to get through as many questions as possible. So today's webinar is an employment law update in which we discuss managing sickness absence. The webinar will be presented by Laura Murphy, who is the HR and employment law expert here at Thesaurus Software. So I'd now like to pass you over to Laura to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and good morning, everyone. I hope you all had a lovely bank holiday and are all rested and ready to go and get managing absence now. I suppose to start off, in my experience, absence management is one of those tricky issues for employers. Employers that I've worked with are often genuinely conflicted in how they manage absences. There's that struggle to find the right balance between supporting those employees who are genuinely sick and dealing with those who appear to be maybe taking advantage of policy that you have in place. So the aim of our webinar today is to give you some tools to help you manage absence in your workplace. I've put up an agenda there, so the main points obviously will be the tools in managing absences, both short and long term. And we'll take some questions and answers at the end, and hopefully we'll have time to get through them all. But to move on quickly, I suppose, I just wanted to look at the costs related to sickness absence to give you an idea of kind of what costs are involved. You can have direct and indirect costs, and both really are equally as bothersome to employers, I would say. Looking at the direct costs, firstly, you've got your company sick pay scheme. So this is the obvious one, paying employees whilst they're out on sick leave. You're also probably looking at maybe some replacement cover. Is it that you have a receptionist and you need to hire in a receptionist to cover that absence, and you have to bring in an agency staff replacement, which again is going to be a little bit pricier too. Do you have overtime costs? Do you have to have existing staff or staff who aren't on leave? Do they have to work extra hours to get the work done, to cover the workload? And then you obviously have your medical referrals. Medical referrals will be very important. Some people mightn't be aware of that cost, but when you're dealing with more complex sickness cases, being able to refer somebody for a medical is very important, and obviously the company bears the cost of that. Looking at some of the indirect costs, perhaps not as obvious, but definitely just as troublesome, and maybe even more so in some cases that I've dealt with. You've got the loss of productivity, continuity, and the negative effect on quality. If you have somebody who's working on a project with a client, is that project now delayed? So, the service being supplied to your customer is going to be affected, and that in turn does put an increased pressure on those other staff, again, who aren't on leave. You've obviously got the time spent on managing the absence. You as a line managers in a lot of small businesses, they're juggling everything. They're very busy, and you don't want to be spending time managing an absence. So that is a cost as well to you. And the final one here is a new point, and is only really a point since this summer with the introduction of a new bill in Irish legislation, the introduction of the Workplace Relations Bill, and it's the accrual of annual leave whilst on sick leave. I don't want to go into it in too much detail, but it's a new piece of legislation that says if you have somebody on sick leave for a year, let's say, they do accrue all their annual leave that year. So if they come back next year, they'll be entitled to your 2016 holiday entitlement, but also their holiday entitlement for 2015. So that's just something to bear in mind, and it's something that it really lends itself to employers to be managing absences when they happen, because you don't want that accrual to happen, and you definitely don't want all those costs either. So to put some of those costs into perspective for you, I just want to show you some figures quickly. These figures come from the Small Firms Association, the SFA, their 2014 report. And these figures are particularly in relation to the smaller companies. So they say that according to the SFA, 4 million days are lost annually to small businesses in Ireland due to sickness absences. You're looking at that equates to €490 million as a cost to the small business employer. To break it down even further, it's an average of 4.7 days per employee per year at a cost of €569 per employee. Maybe on a more positive note, I suppose, in larger companies, sickness absences do tend to be larger, but I think it's still fair to say that these are quite significant figures for a small employer who does not have the means to accommodate such costs. So considering these costs, it must be a priority for employers to manage sicknesses and to get on top of it. So that does lead us to the obvious question and the next question, well, how do you effectively manage absence sicknesses in your manage sickness absence in your workplace? So before we actually just look at the tools to managing, I want to just look at the types of absences to help you understand what you're dealing with. So it will be very important to understand the type of absence that you are dealing with. Employers, you need to distinguish between a short-term absence and long-term absences. How you manage short-term absences, which are usually persistent and seemingly unrelated, will differ from managing a case where somebody is genuinely off sick for a longer time, which chances are is probably a more genuine case. So to clarify what I mean when I say short and long-term absences, your short-term absences usually are lasting a day or two. They could go into a week or perhaps 2 weeks. The causes are the common cold, your stomach bugs, and absolutely, everybody does get sick from time to time, and that's why you'll never eradicate sickness from your workplace, and you don't want staff coming into work when they are sick. But when short-term absences become persistent, or where there appears to be a pattern, that's when the issue arises, and that's when you need to put your management tools in place, I suppose. On the other hand, the long-term absences, when we speak about long-term absences, they're usually lasting over 4 weeks. And again, the causes can be back pain and stress. And I say back pain and stress because they actually are the two most common reasons behind longer-term absences in Ireland, and they account for over 27% of all long-term cases of sickness absence in Ireland. So that's just to break down the types of absences for you. So we'll move along then into actually how do you manage it? How do you manage sickness absence? And first and foremost is your sickness policy. This is just so important. Your sickness policy, when you're managing both short-term and long-term absences, it'll be your saving grace. It'll be your first point of reference. It'll be your go-to guide with regard to how do you manage the absences. The type of information that you want to contain in your sickness policy will be the procedure for notifying the company if an employee is going to get sick. Who do they call? By what time must they call the employer at you? Do you want them to phone? Do you want them to text? What is acceptable in your organisation? You might want to specify the details of any sick pay. Are you offering a sick pay when people are out? And it's good to detail this in a policy rather than dealing it on a case-by-case basis, which will just lead to inconsistency. And when you are managing absence cases, in any case really when it comes to employees, what tribunals will look for is consistency across all management tools. So you want to be consistent. You also want to give details of sick certs. When are employees obliged to bring in a sick cert? Is it after 2 days? Is it after 3 days? Again, it just helps consistency and helps you manage the cases. You want to specify, and I would recommend that you do specify that whether employees may be asked to attend a medical exam. And this will be, you won't use it in all cases, but for those complex cases where you're really looking to manage a situation, having the ability to request somebody to attend a medical exam will be important, and we'll speak about that again in further detail later on. But this is the kind of thing that you want to specify in your policy. So again, just to round up, I suppose, the sickness policy, it sets standards, it ensures consistency, it helps you as employers manage absences when they do occur. What I would say, if you do have policies in place, even if they are existing policies, I would strongly advise that you will review them to ensure that they're up to date. particularly considering the changes that have happened recently. Obviously, a couple of years ago we had illness benefit being paid now after 6 days, so that might make effect on the sick pay policies that you have in place, and also with the accrual of annual leave that we spoke about earlier. So they're just two examples of changes in legislation that mean you really have to be reviewing your policies. So if you do have policies in place, I'd say to you, make sure you do review them regularly. And just one final point on the sickness policies before we move on. Please ensure that your policies are communicated to everybody. It's no good having policies and then you're just putting them up on the drive or you're putting them in the drawer. Make sure they're communicated. Make sure people know where they are, what's what, because again, that's something that a tribunal will look for as well. Did you have policies and were employees made aware of them? So the next step to managing your absences will be to record and monitor. Again, a really important point here is you cannot manage what you don't know. So recording absences is the only way that you're really be able to keep track of them and manage them effectively. You want to retain the basic information: who was out sick, when, why, how often, was it certified, was it uncertified, and that'll kind of be telling in itself, I suppose. You retain all records, all medical certs, all correspondences that you have with an employee in relation to their absences. At some points you might have an informal chat, and absolutely that's a very valid and often the best way to deal with an absence is to have an informal chat. But what I would say is if you do, make a record of it, make a note, even if you just jot something down in a pad and put it in their employee file. If that case then were to escalate and become a more complex case, and you have a record of the meetings that you've already had. So do just keep correspondence and retain all your records. The key thing with recording and monitoring, it will help you recognise warning signals with regard to absences. For example, if you have somebody who has two people who have 10 days sick leave in a 6-month period, let's say, one of those people might have had one period of 10 days where they had genuinely broken their leg or there was an issue that they were sick. Another person might have had 10 individual periods of 1 day absences. So you can see there's two different illnesses and two different issues, and how you would manage them is going to be different. So again, keeping your records is going to highlight that to you. What I would say on recording and monitoring your employee absences is, for most small employers, a simple Excel sheet is absolutely fine. It's perfect. There's no need to complicate it. An Excel spreadsheet that you can open and put in the data is really, it is fine. But I would say do record your absences. To move on to the return to work interview, and this is another. They're all important, but this is a key one, I suppose. And according to UK research done by a leading HR body in the UK, the return to work interview, according to them, is the most effective tool in managing your absences, and particularly short-term absences here. So the return to work interview is it's a low-key, informal discussion between a manager and the employee. And it really should be held after every absence. So regardless if your employee is out for a day, a week, 2 weeks, you hold the return to interview once they come back to work. And ideally, you would be holding it that first day as they do come back, because that is going to illustrate the importance that you put on attendance and people being present for work. So, if you're holding it next week, it's just kind of giving a lackluster approach, and that's just kind of illustrating the employee that it may not be so important. So hold the return to work interview on the day the employee returns to work. The structure of your return to interview. Firstly, you want to understand the causes of the absence. Were there any problems? Is there anything to be aware of? Now, I will just say here, when we talk about understanding the causes of absences, as an employer, you're not fully entitled to know the intricate details of an illness. That's very much the employee's own information. Sorry, bear with me there for a moment. Are we okay? Okay. But you need to know if their illness affects how they're working, I suppose. You also want to confirm correct procedures. Were correct procedures followed? Did the individual call their line manager within this agreed time that you have in your policy? If they didn't, why didn't they? And perhaps it's an opportunity that you need to review the policy with them and go over it with them. You may want to discuss trends in the leave. Is there a pattern emerging? And perhaps this early discussion with the employee may help uncover an underlying issue. Maybe there is something beneath the surface that's in the employee's personal life that's affecting their attendance at work. So having this informal chat just helps bring that up, and you are there to help. So there may be some kind of accommodation that you can make if it's something that's happening that maybe they need to come in later or something like that. Again, having that discussion and discussing the trends will help identify that. You want to just obviously clarify that the employee is now well, that they're now able to return to work as well. Do any adjustments need to be made? I know even in our own workplace, obviously a lot of the team are on the phone. Sometimes if people come in with a sore throat in the winter time, even for the first day, they're well enough to come back to work, but to be on the phone all day, every day would be a challenge for them. So we might reduce the amount of time that they're on the phone. So that's the kind of adjustments that you might make when somebody is returning to work. So obviously, the return to work interview is twofold, I suppose. It's going to help those people who are genuinely sick and who have been genuinely sick, because you're having that little conversation with them. But also, it's going to act as a deterrent for those people who may want to take advantage and may be considering throwing the odd sickie, I suppose. The thoughts of having to have that conversation with the manager when they return might be that deterrent as well. So all in all, the return to work interview is a really successful way of managing your absences, and as I said, particularly for your short-term absences. So we'll move on from there and we look at disciplinary action. And where an absence, again, predominantly short-term absences, where an absence consists of short but persistent and apparently unconnected absences, then after suitable investigation, this can become a conduct issue. And when you have a conduct issue, absolutely disciplinary action may be appropriate. And consequently, if you go in through disciplinary action, dismissal may be one of the outcomes of that process. So I suppose the point is, yes, when people are out sick continuously, a short-term absence, yes, disciplinary action can be taken in certain circumstances, and yes, an outcome may be dismissals. But when I give advice to companies on this, it is really an area that makes employers nervous, particularly if they're moving towards that dismissal. They're just not sure how they can do it. Is it safe to do so? And certainly, absolutely, caution does need to be heeded in the approach that you take when you're going through a dismissal. But what I would say is that the points to consider is that your disciplinary procedure must be followed. So if you're going into a disciplinary action, you have to have your disciplinary procedure in place, and you need to follow that step by step. And you must follow fair procedures. We look at fair procedures in a minute as well. Obviously, dismissal will be, or hopefully will be, the last option, and you'll go through, as I said, fair procedures before you get there. The point I want to make here really with this slide is that yes, disciplinary action can be a form of managing absences. Obviously, when you've worked through other methods such as the return to work interview, when absences become persistent and there seems to be no other way of managing it, yes, disciplinary action can work there, and yes, in certain circumstances you can work towards a dismissal there. So I touched on their fair procedures, as in what you need to do. Just to very briefly to go through them, fair procedures and what is reasonable will differ from case to case and depending on the situation. But just a few of them here. Give an employee reasonable opportunity to improve. Always give somebody the chance to improve. Consider any reasonable adjustments, and we mentioned some of them earlier. Always keep written records of any meetings and communications that you have. Again, this will help you build a case if it progresses and escalates. This next point, get up-to-date medical information at the company's expense. Again, this is really, really important if you're going towards a dismissal, and I would generally say if you're going towards a dismissal on an absence case, I would never do it without a medical opinion. And always inform the employee that their employment is in danger of termination. You would always give them that notice before you even to move towards it. And as I mentioned there, reasonableness is on a case-by-case basis. So these are just a few points, but generally most of these points will be included in your disciplinary policy. So the key really is to have a disciplinary policy in place that you can lean on, and let that be your go-to guide as well. So we'll move on to long-term absences, and I suppose we've really just been focusing on the short-term absence. What I'd say with long-term absences is really the most important thing that I can say here is, and I say to so many employers, when you're dealing with a long-term absence, you have to keep in touch with the individual. And a lot of employers are often surprised and they're afraid to keep in touch, and there is obviously a balance that you don't want to be persistent and annoying somebody when they're off on leave, but I've come across so many cases where somebody has been off on sick leave for a year, maybe 2 years, the company moves on, they hire a replacement, they consider that this person is no longer an employee. And next thing you know, the employee turns up for work and says, oh, well, where's my desk now? And absolutely, they have every right to do so because they still are an employee, they've never been dismissed, and that can cause all sorts of problems for you as an employer. So really, the key thing with a long-term absence is keep in contact and actively manage the case. It's so, so important. And this was a question for a lot of employees or a lot of employers is, well, how do you keep in contact with them? What's the line in? So initially what I would say is, you know, when somebody's just gone off on long-term sick leave and you're wondering, how do I communicate with this person? Go in, obviously, maybe with a softer approach, be sensitive, and clarify, perhaps you want to clarify any sick pay arrangements that you have in place, how are you going to support them during this time. You might want to give them some company updates. You definitely don't want to exclude them from what's going on in the company. You want to be seen to be still including them and keep giving them updates. So that's going to be your initial line of communication with the employee. Moving on then, subsequent meetings and subsequent communications, you want to now be looking at focusing on the return to work. So when is this employee going to be coming back into the workplace? That's what's important for you now as an employer managing this. Are there going to be accommodations that you need to make, and getting health reports if available? Hold the meetings off-site if appropriate. Sometimes if somebody's off in a long-term sickness case, they don't want to come into the workplace. You know, it might be possible for them to come in, or perhaps they don't want to see their employees and colleagues at that time, and that's perfectly acceptable. So you can hold the meeting off-site. It might be in the individual's home, but again, be cautious with that. Perhaps it's a hotel or something, somewhere locally that you can meet up. Be sensitive. In a lot of these cases, it is somebody who may be genuinely sick and going through a tough time, so you want to be sensitive in how you manage this case. But also to know that if you do have somebody on a long-term sickness case, your aim is to try and get them back to work and get them back to work as quickly as possible. But if that appears not to be possible, termination on the grounds of incapacity here is an option, and it is something that employers can go down as well. So if you are looking to manage a long-term case, I'm going to kind of go through the procedure now for you. First step will be really important, is to investigate the illness. Now, I know I said you can't have detailed information on the actual illness, but investigate how the illness will affect the individual performing their duties. Will they? Because that's what is important to you as the employer. Is this individual, will they be able to perform their duties? That is their job. That is their job description. That's what's important to you. Medical advice, when you're dealing with long-term sickness, really important to get medical advice. The nature of your inquiries, I suppose, will differ depending on the individual circumstances, but really at a minimum, medical advice should be sought. The type of thing that you're going to be looking for in medical advice is, when will a return to work be possible? Is it going to be long-term, medium or short-term? And how accommodating you can be as an employer will really depend. If it's short-term, well, okay, maybe that's a short-term hit that we can take. We can manage quite nicely without this person for whatever the next month. If it's a medium term, that may put a little bit more stress on the company. Is it long term? Is this employee not going to be able to come back to work for the foreseeable future? Well, then that's another question. Can the company accommodate that? So that's what you're going to be considering. Also, from your medical advice, you want to know what type of recovery will the person have? Will they be able to return to work? The medical advisor might be able to give you advice on should it be a phased return to work, will you start off part-time, flexible hours. You also want to know if the employee is disabled. And again, get as much information from a medical advisor as possible, I would say. So they might be able to give you advice on the different duties that the employee could take up as well. It can also be when you're sending somebody for a medical advice or a medical referral, that you would give the medic, I suppose, a copy of their job description, so they're a little bit more in tune with what's actually required of the employee. So once you've investigated the illness and you kind of understand what this employee is suffering from and how it will affect their role, the next step is really important, and it's to consult with the employee. So give the employee the opportunity to put forward their own ideas, their own submissions on how they could return to work. It could be that they want to put forward an idea that now they're no longer able to work in one department, but they might see a need for their skills in a different department. So always consult with the employee. And actually I would say here that the labour court, where you've been seen to communicate with an employee right through the process of managing a long-term absence, and the labour court will really consider that to be a much more an adequate process, and will definitely look in your favour, I suppose, a little bit more. So that's a key point. So once you've gained the information from your medical report, you've spoken with the employee, you're now going to consider adjustments. How can you help this employee return to work as quickly as possible? Is it a varied start and finish time? I worked on a case previously where we had a lady with a bad back, and I know she really struggled on the train to work because of rush hours. She was standing, it was busy, so she couldn't manage the train to work in rush hours. So we varied her start and finish time so that she wasn't travelling in rush hours. So it's the kind of thing you might want to consider. Relocating the place of work. Now I don't mean here setting up a new office, but it could be that somebody no longer can manage the stairs, so you're going to move their desk downstairs in the office, or maybe can you accommodate them working from home? Just different options that you might want to consider. You might want to alter their duties, maybe just change their job spec a little bit. Perhaps somebody previously was working packing goods, and now they're no longer able to do heavy lifting, so you might want to consider, is there an office job that they could take up with it less heavy lifting, I suppose. Purchasing aids, is it a specific chair that they need? Is there anything else that you can buy to help them return to work and, I suppose, help them carry out their duties? And a phased return to work. We touched on that earlier. Would it suit this person to start off slowly, to do 2 days a week, 3 days a week? If somebody is incapable of carrying out their full job description, as an employer you are obliged to consider any of these adjustments and to consider them fully and to see if you can implement them, taking account for the cost. If the cost of making an adjustment would impose a disproportionate burden on your company, then there is no obligation, but you definitely have to consider all your options and be seen to consider them. Finally then, I suppose some of these steps may go back and forward and there's discussions at different stages, but once you investigate, you've spoken with the employee, you've considered the adjustments, now you're going to make a decision based on your business needs. Again, the short term, the long term, the medium term needs. And it could be that it might give a period for further assessment. You're going to review it in another month, 2 months, whatever it is. Or you may feel that, okay, this person is not going to be able to return to work for the long term. They're going to need considerable adjustments to their workplace, which we can't accommodate because of the cost, and you move towards a dismissal. I will say, obviously, you're getting into tricky situations here, and it's always really best to seek advice before you go to a dismissal case. But again, the key point, I think, for today is to know that it is a possible outcome and that you can go down that route. So I know I've bombarded you now with a lot of information, and hopefully it hasn't been too overwhelming with how you're going to manage your cases. But if you were thinking of getting to grips with absences. The good news, I suppose, is that you don't have to do it alone, and at Bright Contracts we do have the software and a HR service that will take all that stress away from you. We have fully flexible contracts and handbooks that contain all the policies that we spoke about today. We're also always reviewing them and renewing them with the changes as well, so you'll always have the peace of mind to know that you're fully up to date. And we have obviously our online support as well, which contains a range of template documents and letters from a return to work interview template down to sample letters with regard to contacting somebody if they are out on sick leave. So there's a full range of support to help you through managing absences on the Bright Contracts. And if you would like some more information, I believe you can request a demo at the end of the presentation today. So that really brings my presentation to an end. I just want to summarise briefly before we take questions. The key points really is if you have policies, well, you need to communicate them, you need to be regularly reviewing them, you need to be consistent in how you manage absences. It's really, really important to keep consistency, and you need to actively manage your absence cases, and you need to be seen to really be on top of them. So that brings my side of the presentation to a close. I think we have some questions coming in, so I'll just go over to Rachel now and see what questions we have.
Okay, so thanks Laura, that was very informative. There's a good few questions coming through here, so just a reminder, you can type any questions you have into the questions tab at the right of the screen. So the first question here, should companies have a company sick pay scheme in place? How much should they pay?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a company sick pay scheme in place. You want to be able to support employees when they are genuinely sick. The worst thing would be to have people who can't afford to take time off but are genuinely sick. You don't want sick people coming in to work and then spreading their germs and then just having a cascading effect on you. And as well, it's also better to have a sick pay scheme in place so that you're not managing it on a case-by-case basis, because that just leads to perhaps favoritism or inconsistency, as I spoke to as well. How much you should pay? Well, that's kind of $1 million question and an open question. And it's very much as well what you can afford to pay in your company. I think it's better to make some accommodation rather than none. A lot of companies would maybe average out on 2 weeks pay, and they might see it, and it's totally acceptable to specify that the leave has to be certified rather than uncertified. So I would say yes, do put in a sick pay scheme in place.
Okay. How should I communicate with an employee on long-term sick leave? I think you covered that in the...
I think we did, yeah.
What if an employee refuses to attend a medical exam?
Okay. The key thing here is that if you have it in your policy that employees will be required to attend a medical exam if needed, if they've signed their handbook or they've signed their contract, they're working for you, they've agreed to that term already. It's not possible to force an employee to attend a medical exam. You can't physically take them by the hand and bring them. So if they don't want to go, well, that's fine. But there also brings up another issue for you, that they're now not cooperating with your policies and your procedures that they previously agreed to. So that kind of lends itself to kind of a different management tool as well.
Okay. Would an employee be entitled to see the minutes of any meetings or see the copies of correspondence?
Yeah, I would definitely make them available to the employee. You want to make the process as transparent as possible, so that there's no need to hold them back, and I would definitely let them see them.
Okay. There's another one here. Is it possible to have a one-on-one demo of the Bright Contract software? And I guess I'll answer that one. In the follow-up email, we'll include a link to the recording of the webinar, the slides, and I'll also include a link where you can fill out your details if you'd like a one-on-one online demo of the software, where you can ask as many questions as you want individually, basically. So that will be included in the follow-up email. Can we send an employee to our medical doctor?
Well, we probably touched on that one already. Again, if you have it in your policy that you may ask people to attend the medical, absolutely, that's great. You said you can't physically drag them along, but you can definitely ask them to go, and if they refuse, well then you've kind of got a different situation on your hand where they're not cooperating with your policies. So it might be something that I can talk about again with you, but definitely you can ask them to go.
Okay, are employees entitled to carry over annual leave while out sick even if the company does not pay sick pay?
To carry over annual leave. Yes, they definitely are. Our employees entitled to carry over annual leave? Yeah, they are. Even if if you don't pay sick pay, it's annual leave, they're entitled to carry over their statutory annual leave. So essentially what it's saying is that they're not taking holidays whilst they're on sick leave, so they can carry them over to the next year. So yes.
Okay. How do you suggest handling an employee who refuses to sign her contract?
Yeah, that's a process that you really need to go through. We've put a lot of guidance on the website with how you deal with bringing in new contracts. And what I always say is that you need to be, it's really all about communication and how you're putting it out there, and you're given opportunity to ask questions and really discussing it with the employee. Now, what I would say is legally you have to provide your employees with a contract of employment or terms and conditions of employment. Legally, they're not obliged to sign it, so you don't have to have them sign it. But what you're saying is, if somebody is coming into work every day and they're taking their pay, by virtue of the fact that they're accepting their wages, in a way they have signed the contract and they're agreeing to work with you, it's obviously best to get them to sign it, and hopefully if you have those discussions and you have that meeting, you can iron out any questions that an employee has. So I'd say perhaps you might want to check out the guidance that we have on our website and just really communicate with the employee so that you can move towards getting them to sign it. But again, if you're as a Bright Contracts customer, we would handhold a lot of our customers in going through that process and really help you, because it can be a daunting situation if you have had employees who might be there for a long time and now you're bringing in new contracts, but we can certainly help you through that process.
Okay. By law, do companies need to pay employees when they're sick?
No. This illness benefit, which is a statutory payment, and as mentioned there, that kicks in. So employees will receive some illness benefit after the 6th day of absence. A lot of companies do decide to pay extra, again, for the reasons of supporting those employees when they are genuinely sick, and you don't want somebody coming in to work ill. And also it can be competitive too as well. You know, what's the marketplace doing? What are your competitors offering their employees? But as I said, it's a nice, if you can afford to offer something, it's a good way to do it. But you can certainly put restrictions around how you pay sick pay. You might want to do a scale for people with longer service might get longer pay, people at different grades, and you can certainly specify that only certified illnesses will be paid. So there's a range of tools that you can put around it so that you're managing how you actually do pay the sick leave. And again, our policies would kind of give you lots of prompts and helps on that as well.
Okay. With most modern offices, there is an air conditioning system with no outside windows for fresh air. Air conditioning is detrimental to people who suffer from sinuses. How should the employer handle this where an employee genuinely suffers from bad sinuses?
I might actually kind of clarify that question, I suppose. It might be that one we might just come back to that one. I think whoever sent that in, we might contact you afterwards and just kind of clarify exactly the question there.
Okay. Employee returned after a number of months of being treated for cancer on 2 nights instead of 3 nights. Are they accruing holiday pay for a 3rd night?
Again, that's going to be there's a specific case which I prefer to maybe speak to the individual afterwards rather than kind of making a guess at that one over the web.
We are a seasonal company and do pay for sick leave. Our contracts are fixed term. We currently have an employee out on sick leave or illness benefit. Does this accrue holiday pay, and at the end of the contract are we all finished up?
Well, they will accrue holidays because that's the new piece of legislation that has just come in. So I'm just reading your question there again. at the end of the contract, are we all finished up? Not quite sure what it means there, but it could be that if they're on a contract and they're off sick at the moment, and at the end of the contract, if they've accrued the annual leave, that you would pay for that annual leave at the end of the contract, as you would with anybody who is leaving a company and who has holidays accrued.
Okay. There's one here. How do you record on Thesaurus payroll sick leave? I'm not sure if you...
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm the bright contracts expert, I suppose, that's where my knowledge is. But I definitely have somebody from our payroll team will come back to you on that one and help you report, so you'll know how to report.
Just about Thesaurus payroll, so we do have another webinar in, I think, 2 weeks' time. I can't remember the specific date, but I'll include it in the follow-up email. It's a paid webinar, but it's a training webinar on Thesaurus payroll, so it'll discuss everything, kind of how to do things in Thesaurus Payroll Manager. What if employees
stop? I think that is stop. I think it's
what if employees stop sending in sick certs after 18 months of long-term leave and have indicated that they're unfit to return to work due to surgery?
Okay, yeah, this is really one that you're going to have to manage. And again, it's down to the employer here to get communication back open with the individual. And you, as an employer, you really need to be seen to making all efforts to communicate with the individual. And if it's that you send one letter and you hear no response, send another one. Maybe send it to their next of kin details as well. You really want to be showing every effort. You want to open that communication again now, and perhaps it's time to send the individual to your own medical advisor and get managing that. Again, that's a specific case, and I'd probably recommend getting some sort of a HR advice just to help you deal with that individual case. And certainly if you want to come to us, through the Bright Contracts, we could help you there as well. I see there's a lot of questions coming in on the holiday legislation. So I think what it is in effect now, but I think it might be good if I was to do some sort of a guidance note, we could certainly make that available to everybody, because it is new legislation, and we'll make some guidance available for people on that, and that will help them.
Okay. With regard to the holiday legislation, when is it effective from?
Yeah, it is coming in from 2015. What I would say is people are allowed now carryover leave. So if you're out and you carry over leave into 1 year, there is a limit. So you're not continuously carrying over leave. There's a limit of 15 months. It's a little bit tricky to go through all the ins and outs of it, but I think it would be best to, as I said, to do some sort of guidance note on that to help people.
Okay. Employee on sick leave with sick certs over 2 years with back issues, how long can this continue?
Yeah, that goes back to our point on kind of how long is suitable for your business and what can your business accommodate, going back to the long term, the medium term and the short term. Is it reasonable for you as a company to maintain somebody on sick leave for 2 years? And that's what you have to consider. So again, I'd be opening my communications. I'd be sending a list of very specific questions to a medical advisor. I'd be asking this person to attend a medical advisor. If the advice or the information that you're getting back is saying that this person is unable to work for 2 years, is that something that you can accommodate? And maybe it's up to you as a company to decide, well, we're going to move towards a dismissal or we're going to review that. I'd say definitely, again, this is a case where perhaps some kind of specific HR advice would be needed as well.
Okay, so I think that kind of is all the questions that have come through there. Feel free to ask us any questions you have with the follow-up email, and you can listen back to the recording at your own leisure. So I'd like to thank Laura for the webinar today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you.